Hey, Dr. Vanderslice, how's it going? So I'm gonna jump right into this. I wrote kind of like bullet points on my answers to the questions, and I'm kind of just outlined so I stay kind of on track a little bit. So first part was what stuck out to me from class. One of the main things was like the absolute truth. It's funny because my sister actually would come up to me about a year or two ago, and she'd say like, truth is truth, it's not relative, and I'd play a joke on her like, oh, well, truth is relative, I can believe what I want, but as a joke. But in this class I actually learned that there is absolute truths in this world, and we need to stick to those. Otherwise, we won't share core values of what we learned in the first place. And the second thing is, the other thing that stuck out to me was the bad boy case, just because I was so thrown off by preparing forever for it, and then you flipped it on us, and I was like so unprepared, which I'm fine with winging things, but it was just like I had actually prepared for it. And so when it was flipped, I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And then I tried to fumble around for anything that I could. And so that actually taught me how to be prepared from both sides of an argument rather than seeing from one side and the side that I want. And so that was actually really, really cool. And then the other thing that kind of stuck out to me when I was doing the marketing section was how fine of a line it is in marketing, coming from a Christian standpoint. You do need to find that happy medium, but that happy medium is so like dicey. I feel like any situation can go either way, and so you really have to sit there and meditate and pray on like what is right and what is wrong, and God will guide you the rest of the way. So the second part, things that I did not consider before taking the class. One thing I thought was really interesting when I had pointed out to you that how I had thought that Jesus never did business with sinners, yet you said, he paid tax collectors because he had to, and he did all these things, and you brought up the story about Joseph. And I thought it was pretty interesting how actually the story of Joseph aligns so well with that bad boy case, and that Joseph was pretty much the chief financial officer of Pharaoh, who was like one of the worst. Pharaoh's known to be one of the worst dudes in the world, well, just pharaohs in general. And so I thought those two stories correlated really well together, and I was like, wow, I never actually thought of that. And so it kind of gave me a different perspective on that case. So thank you for that. Also, another thing that I never considered before was the group that talked about 3D printing. I was blown away with how much stuff that they had print, because I had thought just like, oh, people can print little plastic things and all this kind of stuff. I didn't think that they could actually print like ears that would work, and I had never considered that even a thing until I was sitting there, and I'm literally sitting there in class like, what the heck is going on? What is this world coming to? So that was something that I just didn't consider before, that I didn't even think was even possible at this point, but I'm wrong. So what I thought about the student-led learning project, I thought it went really, really well. I learned about, pretty much every topic that they covered, and I learned it in an unorthodox way. Normally you sit there and you get lectured from, a teacher, or, not you, obviously, but normally you kind of just go through a PowerPoint and they lecture you and they talk about this and maybe have one interactive project. But it was interesting because I got to hear from the students and the students' perspectives, and there's so many students in the room, and there's so many different life experiences and work experiences, and all together, and a lot of them kind of just put it into their presentations, and the learning experience was just amazing. Another thing that I thought was really cool was in the group setting for the learning experience was talking to each group member and saying like, okay, this is my section, how does it relate to yours, how does it relate all around? And so I learned a lot from my group members as well from that, and it was kind of a fun process too, and I got to learn and I got to learn about each one of them even more in this process, and grow a closer relationship with them as well. Also, I kind of talked about on my subject how it kind of made me think like, what is the real line of Christianity and marketing at that point? So one of the questions I decided to do was, is the disparity between executive compensation and employee wages ethical or unethical? Me and Paris kind of talked about this in class, and it was kind of just like, is it ethical or unethical? Who's to say? That's a terrible answer, but it all depends on who the executive is, if that makes sense. If the executive is kind of sitting there doing his own thing, not giving back, he's just chilling, like, I don't think that's right for him to. I don't know actually. Part of me says it's not right for him to get so much money because he doesn't do anything, but at the same time it's like, he's the top of the company. Either he founded the company or he's running the company at this point, so he did put in his dues, and he does know so much about the company that, and he has so much knowledge that he should have this amount of money, yet his employees at the very bottom are being paid so little. But then again, it comes back to the fact of, well, it's an entry-level position. They eventually they could work their way up to that point that he's at if they worked hard enough or had the right abilities and stuff like that. And so it's kind of just a hard topic to juggle, and I don't really know how I stand on it. But it really just comes down to the point of, it depends on the executive and how they treat their employees, and do they give money to, you know, their church or their community, or back to the environment, or there's just so many like outside forces that change the views on that subject, and it's just so like volatile. It's yeah. So the second one, identify 2 unethical business practices in your industry and state what you would do to improve them. So I actually chose the industry. I had an interview today with the action sports industry, and so I actually chose a couple things from there that could be an unethical dilemma. And so one of them was with the action sports industry, a lot of them sell swimwear, and so there can be a pretty high sex appeal for, for women and guys in the bathing suits that the women wear or that the men wear, just technically showing off their bodies and whatnot. I think how to improve that, I would think that maybe not make it the center of focus. I know you want to sell that kind of clothing, and you want to sell stuff to go to the beach in. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think at the same time doing it in a way that's not hey, look at this person's figure, rather than, hey, look at this piece of clothing. Not subjectifying the person, but subjectifying the clothing that they're wearing, because that's the real thing that you're trying to sell. And so another thing is kind of just it's not really in the business world aspect, but it's kind of in the athlete's part, is the athlete doping. And so pretty much taking steroids to become a better athlete and become just an all-around better contender. And so to improve that, obviously they put in restrictions and all that kind of stuff to make sure that people aren't doing that kind of stuff. So that was another thing that I thought was interesting. And then also it's just marketing in general, but marketing manipulation. Kind of like how we talked about in class, how, for instance, Instagram, I'll be scrolling through and it'll pop up with something that I was looking online, or that I was talking about with my friends but never even looked up, and it's kind of creepy. So, but at the same time, I'm their target market, so I don't know if that's unethical, because it's stuff that I would want to buy, like board shorts and the clothes that they kind of sell, but at the same time, is it an invasion of privacy? So I would kind of, to improve that, I would just zone in more on that target market and maybe not dig into the privacy as much. Kind of just go off of your core marketing, as in advertisements at events, and then social media, websites, and through the websites. Because if I like a company, I'm going to go to their website, not, see it on my social media and then say oh, I really, really need this. It's I already have a reputable relationship with this brand, and so I'm more likely to just go view their website, if that makes sense, or view their Instagram page, which takes me to their website. So it's just really tricky in that aspect. And so my last one is, how does egoism define ethical behavior? So this one's tricky, because I guess it's not too tricky. Egoism is acting in your self-interest over others. And so it's weird, because sometimes in ethical dilemmas, you need to put others' interests over your own interests. And so egoism kind of just doesn't work in those settings. And sometimes, putting people over yourself is very rare today. And so that kind of puts you one up over the other people, and then sometimes it's just the right decision to make. Like sometimes you don't need certain things, or you don't need to experience this thing, but this person over here needs more opportunities and more rooms to grow at this moment in time than you do. And sometimes it just comes down to the point where you just need to put others above yourself. And also like the point of like egoism, like your self-interests like always alter. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times in my life I've wanted something and then 2 weeks later it was like, I don't know, maybe not. So the fact that egoism is so like prominent in this culture is kind of saddening, because I know that, you know, personalities and attitudes and everything change so often that it just affects every ethical decision you make. And now every ethical situation you're in, you might base it off of your own emotions rather than what's better for the company, or what's better for the other people around me, or what's better for the environment. And it's just like sometimes egoism just does not play a solid role in business. But then sometimes you do need to, like, there does need to be a part of egoism. For example, like if you're applying for a job, like I had a job interview today, like I need, like I'm acting out of my own self-interests, because I need to get this job or this internship or whatever it is. I need to portray egoism in a sense and say what's best for me in this situation. Yeah, it'd be a bummer if other people don't get it, but at this moment in time, like I'm striving for this specific thing. So those are some of my takeaways from this class. Overall, I really, really enjoyed the class. I had a great time. I had a great time with my classmates, had a great time with you. And so just thank you for everything. So I hope to see you soon.